Nathan, thanks so much for that amazing presentation. I also work with Macmillan. I work for a lot of different publications, so I'm really happy to be here. So Mohammed, tell me, I have 45 minutes, correct?
Indeed. Yeah.
Okay, so please stop me if I go ahead. I usually, hey Nathan, I usually stop right on time. And I'm not sure how long this is going to go because I usually do this as an interactive workshop. And this is the
Uh-huh.
first time I'm going to do it online. What I really need is for everyone to give me your opinions. This is all about our own socio-emotional reactions to different students, to different situations. So this is about all of you. All right. I'm going to start just by saying that, just like what Nathan said, a lot of times we're introduced as experts. We have knowledge about certain things, but all of you are the experts in what you do in the classroom. I have a lot of experience. I have 30 years in the classroom and as a teacher trainer. I do not have your experience with your students. So I'm going to need some information from you. The first thing I'd really love to know, can you tell me if you are preschool, primary, secondary, or university teachers? That would really help me. So if you don't mind just putting that in the chat, that way I can refer to maybe one of those areas. Okay, I have to tell you, I worked as a primary teacher, but I love high school. I love that kind of, they push the limits. They are so good at being teenagers. I love high school. So a lot of times I talk about activities. Yeah, Yosef, university too. I love university, but I live in Spain. And for some reason in Spain, university students are still very much in the high school mentality. They live at home and they're not as independent as I'm used to. I'm American. When we go to university, we are expected to be adults. That's not what happens here. So it's a whole different experience being a university teacher in Spain. Having said that, why am I talking about language policy? Well, I just came back from Finland. I love going to Finland. Thank goodness there are still cold places on the earth. It means that we're not going to disintegrate yet in all the heat of the summers. And they gave me a list of topics they wanted me to possibly talk about. And language policy was on this list. And I thought, okay, anything but language policy, anything but language policy. It sounded so boring and out of my expertise level. They talked to their teachers and they said, we'll get back to you. They got back to me. Out of all the incredible topics they wanted me to talk about, they said, yes, we'd like you to talk about language policy. And I thought, oh my goodness. I had never really given a talk about it, but I am a firm believer that, and I know Nathan was talking about critical thinking, and I know that all of you really are very conscious about including critical thinking activities in the classroom. And it's exactly for this purpose. I'm a very strong believer that if we can think critically, we can do anything we want. Now, I'd never given a language policy workshop, and all I had to do was inform myself, educate myself. So I did. And what did I do? I actually went to the experts. Now, I'm going to skip this just quickly because I'm going to tell you who these experts are. I have the fortune, it's not name dropping. I just was very, very lucky to work with two of the really big educational gurus. One of them is Peter Maisto. Peter, if you need any information about anything educational, go to his publications. They're usually very dense and incredibly informative. So I called Peter Maisto and I said, Peter, he grew up in Canada, but he's Estonian. He lives in Estonia. And if you are familiar with the PISA exams right now, Estonia is on the top. So they're doing something well, and Peter is one of the leading figures in making sure the Estonian curriculum is excellent. And one of the things that Peter does is language policy. And he explained to me what it was. It's really, there are structures. You don't have to redo language policies. You're not going to Finland to tell them, to help them write a language policy. It's already been written. Most of the language policies around the world are the same. What you need to do is help them frame the language policies for their own purposes. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I could do that. And he said, no, you can't. I've been doing this for years and you need a lot more time to study it. And I thought, okay, I need to call Finland and say, I can't do a workshop on language policy. But before I did that, I called David Marsh. And David Marsh is everything, just like Peter, everything you'd want an incredible educator to be: compassionate, incredibly informed, and he is a yes person. He believes that, yes, you can do something. All you have to do is be prepared. And I said, David, Peter says I can't do language policy. What do I do? It's about socio-emotional factors in the classroom, and teachers just need to be reflective. And he said, that's right. That's all you need to do. Prepare and do it. So I go with both of them, that we have to be educated about language policy, and also that we can do anything we want as long as we prepare for it. So having said that, I'm going to go back a little bit, because this is a quote that I found that I thought was very important. I have the chat covering a little bit. A world with more languages, just like a world with more cultures, art, or species of animals, is a better world. More cultural, rich, and interesting. So in the chat, what do you think about that? Does that resonate with you? Is that something that you think you would think about and you believe in your classroom? The more languages, the better. Just let me see what you think about this in the chat. I really like this idea, and yet there's a whole other side. The other side is what a lot of us are doing in bilingual classes is using a classroom language. Difference is magic. I love that, Yasmin. Thank you. Difference is magic. And I think a lot of our work, a lot of language policies, and hopefully I'm going to end with this, and hopefully this is what you're going to get out of this talk, is that the more we can appreciate what everyone else is doing, where everyone is in their acceptance of differences, is perfect. So on the one hand, diversity is so important. Being respectful of diversity is important. And what I'm hopefully going to be sharing with you in language policy is that acceptance. A lot of us think we are very accepting of diversity, me included. And actually preparing for the workshop in Finland 2 months ago, I realized that there were elements that I had not considered, and perhaps I had some hidden prejudices about. So that's one of the things I want to share with you. In our classroom language, we are helping our students become globally more accepting. A lot of us, if we feel intelligent in our own language, it's very difficult to feel intelligent in another language if we're learning it as adults, and if we don't read it and study it and talk to other people in that language. So some of the classroom language dynamic is feeling insecure and feeling frustrated because we're not able to express ourselves the same way we do in our home language. And so language policy is about the teachers helping students feel more comfortable in whatever classroom language you use. If that's the majority language of the culture that you're teaching in, perfect. If it's not, and you're teaching them English in an Arabic country, you're teaching them French in Spain, or you're teaching them Chinese in a Latin America country, whatever classroom language you're using, we want you to really reflect on how you're acting, whether you have certain prejudices or not, and rethink them. We are human. I always tell teachers in workshops, we are humans, and our students are humans, and we all have faults and we all have strengths, and we just need to be very accepting of all of these. All right. So what I want to talk about in language policies is this: our hidden prejudices. A lot of us think, again, we don't have prejudices. I don't think there's anyone on the planet, except for maybe some very, ascended spiritual masters, who don't have prejudices. The media, movies, TV, social media, the way we talk to each other in our families, the way we talk to each other with our friends, when we go to the cafes, all of this has an influence on us. And if we are not constantly, and I mean constantly, filtering what we hear, a lot of the information settles in our mind and we forget to reframe it. We forget to decide and think about whether it reflects our values or not. And in the classroom, that's very important because our students pick up on all of our prejudices. Prejudices can come out in the tone of voice, in our body language, in the words we actually choose, in where we place students in the classroom. All of these are prejudices, whether we are aware of it or not. So let's go through some of them, all right? In the chat, tell me your first reactions. For primary students, you may not see this or you may, but especially high school and university teachers, what is your first reaction when you see these images? Be honest. No one is going to judge you. Tell me what your first reactions are. Normal. Very interesting. Okay, I got out of the classroom before I had this, but I love it becomes normal. Is it becoming normal because a lot of your students look like this or because you can accept it immediately? I think that's very interesting. I'll have my cold temper. That was mystery. Okay, and in some schools, the girls and boys are not allowed to have their hoodie up. But in the United States, it's a big trigger. So a lot of them, interesting, Fatima is not accepted at all. Yeah, it's difficult because a lot of us, especially in high school, when there's so many elements going on, and the students confront us either visually like this, or with their voices, or a lot of times with their bodies, we are much more defensive a lot of times with our own style. So for instance, Sareka would see a girl like this and say, that's her style, has nothing to do with me. The girl is not trying to intimidate me. She's just being herself. Hopefully we would say the same about the boy. Maybe he just does not want to be seen. Unfortunately, a lot of us would be triggered and become a little defensive. And these are the kinds of things we just need to be aware of. How are we reacting? This slide I'm going to go through because I've already introduced Peter and David. So this is what I want to do. I'm going to introduce a few pictures. And again, with no judgment, I'd like you to tell me what you think. All right. Where are they from? Just guesses. Where are they from? What do you think? Yeah, I know. Who are they? From Thailand. Okay. From Japan. I have a question for all of you. Who thinks that it could be considered racist to not be able to distinguish between a Korean or a Japanese, or Japanese and Chinese? Is that considered racist? That's another sort of element I just love to establish. Countryside. Yeah. Mr. Rabab just says Asian. Now, the woman is not obviously Asian, is she? So we just need, what's their financial status? What are their feelings towards community and education? Doesn't matter what you say, Belgium, interesting. Okay. Doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. I'm actually not going to tell you what I know about these people. What's important is the stories that you're telling yourself in your head. It's the story that I tell myself in my head when I found this picture. Are they married? We kind of assume they're married because she has his hand on her shoulder. Are they happy? It looks like they're happy because they're all smiling. Do we really know? Do they have other children? Did they lose any children? Do they want more? These are all questions that are really important to ask ourselves because we are already making up stories about them. Okay, middle class and have a good attitude. Okay, Fatima, really wonderful. Okay, whole complete thought. Ready for another picture? Let's go to another one. Who is she? You are already making up a story. You are already making up judgments. There is nothing wrong with that. Just be aware that you're doing it. Where is she from? Who is she? Who are her friends? And then my next question goes, she's from Africa, interesting. How often is she on social media, right? And oh my goodness, how important are the followers? Miss Universe, could be, could be. What are her feelings towards community education? She's so sweet because she has this beautiful smile. That's a story you're telling yourself. It's possible, and it's possible that she really is not very compassionate to people around her. We don't know. Until we get to know her, we don't know, but they're stories we tell in our heads. If she walked into your classroom, how would you treat her? Right? You ready for another one? Okay. This family. Comments, anything. What's the first question you ask yourself when you see these three people? You think they're from Brazil. Okay. All right, Yosef. Where are they from? Where's the mother? Great question. Where is the mother? Single father? Uh-huh. What's their religion? Great bonding. It looks like they're really close, right? Could be from South America. It looks like they're close. Maybe they are really close. Maybe they're not. Maybe this was only for the photographer. Maybe the father said, smile and hug me. We don't know. Where's the mother? Okay, and it's not as if I want you to ask the students what their religion is. I'm saying in your mind, what is the story you're telling yourself? What are the questions you're asking? Maybe they're Muslim, maybe they're Jewish, maybe they're Buddhist. We do not know, but we're making up stories. What does the father do? They have very clean clothes. Is he financially independent, or did they get these clothes from a charity store? We don't know. And why should we consider all these things? Simply because you're doing it without realizing it. And I want you to be aware that you're doing it because we treat our students differently depending on the stories we tell ourselves. I had a student that walked in every day with really dirty clothes and he smelled and it was difficult to be around him. But I was in primary school and I had to be around him a lot and I had to find a way to be compassionate and at the same time sort of absorb the fact that this was not going to change in the near future. So what I'm saying is about language policy, it's not so much about the language, it's about how we treat language and the socio-emotional part of having students in our classroom. It's not just about language. So for instance, you have these two girls in your classroom. There are a lot of people who would treat them the same. And there are a lot of people who would make instant judgments and treat them differently. Perhaps the mother is one who took the photograph. It's very possible, right? But she isn't in the photo. If the father and two sons walked into your classroom, what would the story be that you're telling yourself? All right. So is there a point that we've linked between language and yes? So what I'm saying, I'll say it one more time. Language policy is about how we are treating our students, what the experts say, and I'm going back to Peter Maisto and David Marsh, because they go all over the world and they've been doing it for decades. When they go into a school, they don't talk necessarily about language. They talk about how the teachers feel about different accents, how they feel about different languages. So for instance, we're going to see a slide in a few minutes about how much nationality is attached to language policy. In Germany, for instance, in Germany, they chose randomly, out of all the different dialects of German, they chose High German. They chose High German to be the national language decades, hundreds of years ago. Actually, not hundreds, decades ago. If a student does not speak High German in the classroom, teachers treat those children differently. In Germany, for instance, in the past, hopefully not in the present, the language you spoke, if you spoke dialect at home, you were treated much differently than a student that spoke High German at home, for instance. So when you're going around talking about language policy, it's not so much the language, but the teacher's reaction to everything behind the language. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so we're talking about the girl on the top left or the girl on the bottom right, 10 pounds to change your haircut. For me, okay, so it's very interesting, our reactions. This is a perfect opportunity to talk about different reactions. When I look at the girl in the lower right, I think freedom. I think self-expression. I think that girl is running through the meadow with butterflies. And another one of our participants said, I'll pay 10 pounds just to get her to cut her hair. I'm assuming that it was about that student. So that's exactly my point here. No matter what language this girl speaks, no matter what a good student she is, we are reacting to her hair, to her dress, to the color of her skin. We are reacting to her smile. We're reacting to how she stands. Everything, whether you realize it or not. Yes, Mariam, yes. Whether we realize it or not, this is going through our minds. So as uncomfortable as this might make you feel, it's also true. Again, we are human. Our students are human. When we reflect on how we react to students in the classroom and we are transparent about it, we are helping them become more accepting of the students around them. So just for instance, these two girls, who would you assume is going to be really good at math? Who would you assume is going to be really good at science? Who would you assume is going to be better at arts? Where are you going to sit these girls? Are you going to sit them together? Are you going to sit one in the front of the room? Are you going to sit one in the back of the room? You need to ask yourselves these questions. Again, when teachers, and I've been in a lot of workshops, I've given a lot of workshops, and I have teachers that get very defensive, and I try my best to say things so that they don't become defensive. But when something really hits us inside something that we haven't looked at, one of our first reactions, most of us, is being defensive and saying, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how this is anything about language policy. I'm out. And I understand. And yet, to be the best educators we can, we need to continually, and I mean every day, reflect on our practices. I always say our superpower as educators is reflection, and it's free. So why not use it? And this is one of the ways we can do it. We use this opportunity to reflect on our reactions. Okay. This is another perfect example. Who is he? Journaling. I love that. There's so many people that say journaling is very important. I used to go home and say, that was the worst day of my life. Why was it the worst day? What happened? What could I do tomorrow? And then I'd go home and say, that was an amazing day. Why was it amazing? What can I take from that and replicate it? Now, those are very, very important, both of those. And yet again, the weather is different. Our students have reacted to their parents and friends differently. So even if we do the same exact things the next day, it might not go as well. So this is when we really reflect on our beliefs and we have more compassion for ourselves, we sort of roll with the punches in the classroom. All right. Yeah, journaling really is important. So someone says he's a singer. Where's he from? What country? Who knows? Anything? Again, I think this is the last picture we're going to see. So it's not important if you're right or wrong. I don't believe in right and wrong. I just believe in being able to justify an answer. The important part is making up the story, is knowing that your mind has been working since that picture flashed on the screen. So a lot of people think he's American. I showed this picture to my Finnish teachers. Brazil, and see, he might be African. Okay, so I showed this picture to the Finnish teachers. They all said, anywhere in the world except for Finland. And it turns out that he is Finnish. He is Finnish. If he walked into your classroom, would you have known that? Doesn't matter. But the important part is, how do you react to him? So if you can get a little centered and be aware, this is university, my first day, and this man comes into my classroom. I need to check how I'm reacting to him. I need to check my assumptions, right? So that's really what I want to say about language policies. Language policies are about nationalism in the policy itself, in the structure. And I can send you language policies, the ones that both Peter and David recommended because they both worked on them, are in Dubai. There's a language policy for the international school. has everything there, and I'll show you some of the most important points. But it comes down to the fact that language policy has to do with nationalism. How? Well, who deserves to be a citizen in your country? Could you think about that, please? Who deserves to be a citizen and why? Does it have to do with language? Can you just write in the chat what you think? There's no right or wrong answer. The more we are honest with ourselves, the better this gets. Does the person need to know all the laws of the country? Does the person need to dress the way the majority dresses? Does the person need to be ideologically, anyone who abides the law? Interesting. Okay, so Yusuf, does the person need to speak the language or not speak the language and abide by the law? Person born in the country. Okay, so only people born in the country, Nuamni, Mini, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, honest people. So then we need to figure out who honest people are. Who decides what's honest? Is that following the law? Interesting, who work hard for the country and speak the language. So language is very important, Fatima, the person who needs to embrace and respect the values of the country. So when we have different political parties, the values are often very different. So who decides? Someone in one political party, if that person wants to become a citizen and has different values in that political party, they're not going to be able to be a citizen. These are just things we need to think about. It seems so easy, and yet it's not. What elements of your culture are important to you? Is it knowing certain lullabies? Is it knowing certain songs? Is it appreciating art or recognizing the country's best artists or singers? What is this? Okay, Nathan. Is the ability to speak the majority language of your country the deciding factor in being a citizen? Okay, so Shaima has a pretty complete one, who speaks our country's language and follows our rules and traditions. And I am now a citizen of Spain. I had to get the highest level of Spanish before, but does that mean that I share the ideology of Spaniards? Maybe not, maybe. But I passed the exam because I memorized the laws. Within the geographical border of the country, and we know that in a lot of countries, being born in that country is not the deciding factor. So there are other things. Follow our rules and respect others. Okay, so you're thinking, what I really love about these comments in the chat is that you're really thinking about it. And let's look about it a little bit more, how nationalism and language have been used in different countries. And this is historically, all right? And think about how it's being used in your country. So in Finland, for instance, when people are asking, what is the connection between our first reaction at photographs and language, this is what it's about. In Finland, for instance, Finland has not been a country, an independent country for hundreds of years. It's only been a few decades. In Finland, they decided that language was very important. To be a citizen of Finland, you have to speak Finnish. There aren't many people in Finland, I think it's just a little more than 5 million. So they need a lot of people to be practicing and using the language. It's a beautiful language, very complicated. I still only know how to say a few words, but oh my goodness, I wish I knew more. So the idea is in Finland, language is absolutely essential. Okay, interesting. All right. In Germany, as I was saying, in Germany, language was used to divide. In Finland, it was used to maybe bring people together, helping people learn the language. In Germany, it was used to divide. So anyone who didn't speak High German was an other. So it wasn't that, again, this is my prejudice, wasn't that healthy. In Europe, what do you think? Is language very important when we're talking about nationalism? Okay, so they got, in a lot of countries, it does. Okay, so why do you think nationalism in Europe, the European Union, why do you think that language is a very important part of nationalism? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. in this case, it's fairly obvious, right? Because the borders, there are so many different countries in Europe. If we don't distinguish between language, then why are there borders at all, right? And maybe there won't be soon. Maybe there won't be. But in the European Union, language is very important. Interesting. See, this is perfect. In Sri Lanka, language represents the class or high society mobility. Yep. In the United States, for instance, I lived in the northern states. I live in New York. And if someone came from the South, there was a lot of prejudice about it. It's not true because some of my family is from the South. But if you have a Southern accent, a lot of people think you are not as intelligent. So it's something we need to be aware of, that the accent, the language, dialects, expressions, they affect us. In the United States, historically, now there's, craziness going on, craziness in the United States. Very happy to be in Spain right now. But when the British colonists first went to the United States, they wanted a break from the British. If any of you know the history of the United States, and I'm really not bothered if you don't, when the British went there, they wanted to cut off ties. Excuse me, when the colonists went, they wanted to cut off ties with the British. What they wanted to do was make their national language Greek. They wanted to cut off so dramatically that everyone would speak Greek. The problem was there were very intelligent people in the British, in the people that went over to the United States in the beginning, and they started writing immediately. And they wrote so prolifically, it was just so much writing in English that they couldn't go to Greek at it. There was no point where it would make any sense. Okay, so Zig is saying in India, that's very prevalent also. Yeah, Mariam knows about the prejudices in the United States and so much more, so much more. If you're a New Yorker and you listen to a Californian speak, there's a lot of tension. And we laugh about it if we realize what we're doing. So in the United States, historically, language was very important, but they finally just said, forget it. In Africa, is language an important part of nationalism? In Africa, as most of you know, it's going to be a little more complicated because there were a lot of people who went in. There's the French, and then there was the Dutch, and then there was the Americans, and everyone's going in to dominate. And so in Africa, there are a lot of different languages, and a lot of the tribes, a lot of the indigenous people don't want to speak the language of the conquistadores, but they don't have much choice because it's now the national language. Okay, so Youssef is saying it had a lot to do with the language you speak. Yep. And in Ireland, it's a similar story to the United States. In Ireland, they wanted Gaelic. They still want Gaelic to be the national language. The problem is that Gaelic, as beautiful a language as beautiful as it is, not many people speak it. And even the ones who do, it takes a lot of time to teach it to the younger generation if they're not learning at home. And so the people who are going into government do not speak Gaelic. And so they can't have a national language that people don't understand at the top positions in the government, right? So let's see how we're doing at time because I got so involved with this. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. I just want you to see that language status has a lot to do, language policy has a lot to do with nationalism, has a lot to do with appearance, has a lot to do with our prejudices. And again, the more we respect that and are aware of it, the better educators we're going to be. We just need to be more accepting so we can accept our students. So the following, I think there are 5 points that Pedro Mejisto says are the most important part of a language policy. If we're going to be really balanced in our schools. So for instance, school assemblies need to be in the classroom and the majority languages. Right? We need to make sure, and I think I misspelled assembly. So Nathan, if you're still there, please forgive me. I need AI to do spell checks. I don't believe in AI. Sorry, Ron. Okay. All languages used for instruction deserve equal consideration. So for instance, when I was in Finland, there was a lot of talk about this. We really had, thank you very much. We had to really talk about this. If you teach math and English in the morning, then you need to teach math on Monday. You teach math in the morning in English. On Tuesday, teach math in the afternoon in Finnish. And then, oh my goodness, do I have a lot of typos? Excuse me. the next day teach math in Finnish in the morning, and on Thursday you teach math in English in the afternoon. So you see you're balancing it not just with the day, but with the time, because we all know that in the afternoon the kids need more projects and less direct teaching. Both L1 and L2 are used for teaching of high status subjects. High status subjects is not PE and not art. Excuse me for both teachers. If you're a PE or art teacher, they should be high status, and they're not considered to be. So for instance, science, history, natural science, social science, those sort of things, right? And the staff has discussed and agreed on language usage. I did this on purpose so you can find all the mistakes. Signs are both in L1 and L2. And I'm going to go past this slide so we don't have to keep looking at that one. So to end this, and I really appreciate all of the thinking that I see going on in the chats, and I'm just assuming that everyone else is thinking as well. Language policies, whether you are on that team in your school to create a language policy, and again, you don't have to because they're already done. You just need to take someone else's and adapt it. Nothing wrong with it. I was just on a thread in LinkedIn, and they were asking, is it ethical to use someone else's material in the classroom? Yes, of course. Make it personal. Give them credit for it. We don't need to invent everything again if it's already done. We need our energy to connect with our students, emotional energy. Same with language policy. If we're on the team, it helps us explore our hidden prejudices. If we're not on the team to create a language policy, then at least it gives us an opportunity to think about our hidden prejudices, about our students' stress or their accent or their language, or whether they're from a single family or from two women, two mothers or two fathers. All of these things come into play. They give us the opportunity to consider our reactions or responses to our students. If a student, for instance, mine, who really did not have very clean clothes and who didn't take many showers, do I speak less to him? I did at first. Do I ignore his questions when he raised his hands? Don't remember, probably in first, yeah. We just need to see, how are we treating those students differently, if at all? Do they help us become more compassionate with ourselves and our students? I'm an English-speaking person in Spain. I feel like I can express myself fairly well in English. In Spanish, if someone's patient, I can pretty much talk about anything in Spanish also. But the more compassionate I am to myself when I'm speaking Spanish, the more compassionate I am to other people when they speak English with me. That's usually how it goes. All right. And I think what we all want to do, and one of the reasons why Mohammed has this incredible platform, this conversation, is that we need a generation that is more global, has better global perspective, knows how to negotiate, knows how to go out in the world and find connection instead of differences. And when we see those differences, and when our students see those differences, they just roll with the punches instead of being affronted with them and reacting instead of just acting. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, well, hopefully, Ira, that's what you were saying. That's the key, hopefully. And I just want to end. This is going to be shamelessly advertising one of my online courses that I'm just putting up, an online course about emotional health, and it has a lot to do with this. How can we explore our own emotions so that we help our students in the classroom with their emotional health? When we have a strong learning environment, the affective domain, everything becomes easier, because what I explain in this course is that if the limbic system doesn't feel safe, the information does not go into the frontal cortex and we don't process that information. So if we can become more compassionate educators, we help our students become more compassionate global citizens. How's that? And that's, I think, how I'm going to end it. Observe your reactions to your students. Be compassionate with yourself, and hold lightly how you react to language knowledge. Really think about it. So I would love for you to ask me any questions. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you. I believe so too. Hopefully others will as well. If you have any questions, please ask me in the chat. I'll see if I can answer it fairly well. We have 60 seconds. Mohammed, how are we doing? Means I can teach subjects in Arabic and English for American students. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. That was wonderful. Actually, yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed listening to it. So guys, if you have any questions to Donna, could you please drop them in the chat box?
If you go to scaffoldingmagic.com, that's where you can find me. Please send me a message. I'm more than happy to answer anything, any doubts. So thank you very much, Rasha.